Welcome to episode 285 of Sports Geek. On this week's episode, I chat with Brett Clarke to learn more about the growing empire of Thrill One Entertainment.
Welcome to Sports Geek, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host, who is amazed with stories sports teams are producing on a regular basis, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. Yes, my name is Sean Callanan, and you can find me on all good podcast platforms, but primarily at sportsgeekhq.com. But this podcast is available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and my favourite podcast app, Pocket Casts. You can also find out more and keep in touch via the Sports Geek News email. Comes out every week detailing some of the articles and links that I'm sharing on a regular basis. You can sign up for that at sportsgeekhq.com/SGN. Otherwise, you can contact me numerous ways. You can try via social media at Sean Callanan or at Sports Geek on most platforms, or you can try the old-fashioned way, email Sean at sportsgeekhq.com. Before I jump into my chat with Brett Clarke from Thrill One, you might know it better as Nitro Circus and everything around the world of action sports. Just want to have a quick chat about the sports biz Zoom calls, powering through and actually keeping me connected with the scene through this pandemic. It's been a lifesaver for me. I really enjoy connecting with everybody. There are 6 weeks of Sports Biz Zoom replays available on sportsgeekhq.com. Last week's chat was Sports in 2030. Yes, we went there. We started looking at sports in the future. Why wouldn't you look 10 years in the future while you're in the middle of a pandemic? I'd love to see you there. We host them twice a week to cater for the wide audience that is the Sports Geek audience. If you are in Europe, the UK, South Africa, you can come along to our Tuesday call. I'd love to see more people on those calls. And then also we've got our regular Wednesday call, which is Tuesdays, 5 p.m. for my friends in North America. Some of the topics coming up are all going to be focused around the digital to dollars process. So if you're interested in sponsorship, then turn up to the Know Your Pitch session. If you want to understand more about digital rate cards and valuing your digital, come to the Know Your Value session. Do you want to know what platforms are providing attention and value and what you should be doing on those platforms? Then come to the Know Your Distribution session. If you want to learn about how we go about building a content franchise that engages and is easy to sell, then come along to Know Your Content session. And if you want to see how I go about analysing social fans to understand how to engage more than just your digital cheer squad, then come to the Know Your Audience session. So you can go to sportsgeekhq.com. There's a link there that says join me on the Zoom calls. Sportsgeekhq.com/Zoom calls is directly there. That's how you can RSVP. It would be great to see you there. It's great seeing regular returnees as well as people who have been long-time supporters of both myself and the podcast, turning up to those calls on a weekly basis. Additionally, one of the benefits of being a Sports Geek Patreon subscriber is you get to watch those Sports Biz Zoom replays. So please, if you appreciate the work that I'm doing across podcasts, newsletters, and now Zoom calls, you can be a Patreon supporter. You can go to sportsgeekhq.com/Patreon. It helps pay for the costs of producing a newsletter, getting James to edit the newsletter, getting DJ Joel to call my voiceovers, getting Jolie to pull together the podcast show notes and publish it. And I really appreciate all the people who have come on board recently. It is much appreciated, and it helps me shape what I'm trying to do in this space. You can do it as a personal supporter for as little as $4 a month. You can be a regular attendee to the Sports Biz Zoom and say, yes, I'm a Sports Biz Zoom supporter. If you're a startup and want some visibility with the Sports Geek podcast audience, you can do that for as little as $20 a month. And if you're a business that wants to reach the Sports Geek podcast audience, you can do so as a silver or gold supporter. Check out all the options at sportsgeekhq.com/Patreon. I really do appreciate it. Before I get into my chat with Brett Clarke, from Thrill One and Nitro Circus. Just wanted to quickly, I guess, update you and ask you if there's a way that I can help you. I really do appreciate working with podcast listeners, whether that's working on new content initiatives, helping you review and design future digital and social media efforts, if it's helping you rework and understand what your sponsors want and better deliver for them if you're in which make good territory, which we're all in, admittedly, and how we could apply the digital dollars process to help you develop audiences and revenue. Happy to have a chat. If you want to work with Sports Geek, I love working with podcast listeners. You simply go to sportsgeekhq.com, click one of the buttons that say call me, or reach out to me, Sean at sportsgeekhq.com, or slide into my DMs on LinkedIn or Twitter. I'm available on all of those platforms. Let's have a chat. But now, here is my chat with Brett Clarke from Thrill One. Very happy to welcome the Chief Commercial Officer from Thrill One Sports and Entertainment, Brett Clarke. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Sean. Great to be here.
So we've known each other for a long while, and so I know your backstory, but I want to share that with the audience. How did you get your break into the world of sports?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like it's been an age now. I definitely didn't have as many grey hairs back when I started, and probably wasn't carrying as many kgs, but I started in sort of volunteer sports at Surf Life Saving for a period of time, and then was sort of lucky enough to pick up a role at the Melbourne Storm back in the end of 2004 into 2005, and spent a year down there. A year that's sort of pretty transformational. Got married that same year, and then I was able to pick up a role back with the West Tigers. I'm a New South Welshman, so sort of was back in Sydney, and I was able to get home and stayed at West Tigers there for 8 years, and 8 amazing years. Fantastic club, fantastic. Property, location, the people, from within the organisation, the players, the fans, really loved my time there, and had some history there. My dad played, professional or first grade for the West Magpies back in the day, and so it felt like a bit of a homecoming, and so 8 years down the path, and worked with some great people, Steve Noyce and Scott Longmuir and Stephen Humphreys, who's now at Manly Sea Eagles. And that was a lot of there was a lot of change in the NRL on the area you're working in, sales and marketing. Digital was just starting. Like a lot of the NRL clubs were starting really the strong push into membership. So it was a really exciting time to be at the NRL, at an NRL team like Wests. Yeah, no, it was. I mean, it was a unique time, right? It was the time when the club network first started, and the club websites were sort of a a bit of an add-on, at some point, at the time, and then the NRL, and I remember the team there, put forward the club network, which was fantastic. Membership started, and I can't. It's probably where my grey hair started to come from, but we had playing out of 4, in some years 5 home stadiums, and trying to run a membership program, where people have a seat for a single game and then move to the next stadium, and same again. So it was a good time, transformational time, both I think on the field and off the field, and it really set me up for then the next phase of my career. And I was headhunted to join a company that was called Nitro Circus at the time, and I remember I was on the way to a press conference we were doing, and I called in to meet someone I'd known, the CEO at Nitro Circus, Michael Porrer, and I sat on his balcony. I was in a suit, ready to go to this press conference, and he was sitting there in a t-shirt and a pair of board shorts on his balcony overlooking Warriewood Beach, and telling me about this business of Nitro Circus, which I had some understanding of, but not enough detail to make a really good decision. And after a number of discussions, it presented just a really good opportunity. I remember at the time, West Tigers were one of the better sort of social media clubs, and I think we were sort of around about in the 50,000, 100,000 followers at the time. And I remember going home and sort of logging onto Facebook, this was pre-video and image days as well, and seeing 3.4 million followers globally, and it was like, okay, I need to stand up and take notice. And the next search I did was an image search, and the first image I saw was one of our wheelchair athletes rolling down a 50-foot ramp in a wheelchair. And I remember my wife saying to me, "You're really going to go and work for these guys that send people in wheelchairs down ramps?" And, the rest is history, almost 8 years, or actually a little over 8 years now. So at Nitro Circus, which is now Thrill One Sports Entertainment.
So what was Nitro like in 2012? Because it was this, the growth of action sports, and you had the rise of these action sports athletes and on multiple disciplines. So what was it like, going into that first role of, global head of business development and marketing partnerships at Nitro? What was it like going into that business? Because it's completely mind-changing compared to like an NRL club or a traditional sports club where it's like, here's our season and here's when we play and here's our opponents. What was that Nitro Circus like initially when you first came in?
Yeah, I mean, it was somewhat, in some respects, a small business, right?
Yep.
Yeah, probably no more than a dozen staff at the time. Very family business. The CEO at the time, Michael Porra, had a number of his family working in the business, and it definitely felt like that sort of entrepreneurial startup type business. At the same time, and I use this analogy a lot of times. As a startup business with the 3.5 million people sitting at the door waiting to come on in, which is a nice head start. But the appeal of that as well was, I joined a company and was able to set the commercial strategy from a blank canvas, which there's very few opportunities, and it was obviously the appeal of that role was to go in and start a program from scratch. And I mean, on the sponsorship side, we literally had a few $100,000 sponsorship a year, and and that's now grown considerably year on year, and we're now an 8-figure a year sort of sponsorship business. We were doing around about 10 shows a year, somewhere in that range. We're now doing upwards of 50 events a year right around the globe on every continent. We're producing countless hours of media content. So it's been really enjoyable to sort of be part of a business that has literally started from a family business. We talk about a small company in Mona Vale, which is now sort of taking on the world. I remember the day we actually performed at Madison Square Garden, and we sold out literally every single seat and standing room only. And it was one of those sort of moments that I think you sit back in your career and you say, okay, we've made it. The world's most famous arena, we've sold it out. And you stand in the middle of the floor. Truth be told, at that day, I actually was down the show floor, and in the middle of our show, one of the bikes went astray, and I went out to actually move the bike before the rest of the athletes came down. I actually tripped over one of our mats on the floor and slid across the floor, and that's my only performance at Madison Square Garden is a fail and end up with a broken finger. So it was quite the ride.
Oh, well, I mean, I hope someone captured it. That should be on YouTube somewhere. I mean, the interesting thing for me, like when you went into Nitro, I'm assuming, was it really all around, I guess, the brands that were very much related to the sport? And over the last 8 years, you've gradually widened that sponsorship portfolio, like moving from motorbikes and like all things related to your sport to being that wider piece. Was that what it was like when you started, and the widening of, I guess, the opportunities because you've got such a broad fan base?
I think action sports is an interesting space, and still to this day, and it's part of why we're now Thrill One Sports Entertainment. We've brought in other properties. Action sports is a very sort of deregulated structure. There is no governing body. There's no NFL, NBA, FIFA type structure. So what we knew we had the best talent in the world. We had a great product, and it was a matter of sort of putting all that together. And talking about the audience that we appealed to, and again, I talk about the size of that audience was substantial before we had even really kicked the ball. And I guess part of the strategy was to expand both the volume of content we were doing, build characters around. We had some amazing talent, people like Travis Pastrana, who is a star in his own right. Aaron Wheels, Fotheringham, our wheelchair athlete who opened the Paralympics in Brazil, jumping through the Olympic rings or the Paralympic rings. And then we've grown other athletes, a guy called Ryan Williams, who's an Australian based scooter and BMX rider who quite literally was a 17-year-old kid, at the time, and is now sort of, in his mid-20s, and, is a YouTube star. He's the best scooter and BMX athlete in the world. So we developed the talent. And then we've developed properties around that as well, because we've identified opportunities in the market, and with our expertise in event management, marketing services, sponsorship and commercial broadcast, we know we can deliver, premium events in markets that people wouldn't otherwise consider. So, it's been a fun ride, and it's sort of it's very much a roller coaster. You never know what you're getting 1 year to the next, but that's the beauty of working in a group like this, where we're nimble and we're flexible, and we're able to sort of take opportunities when and where we can.
I mean, one of the things we've seen over the past 10 years, and even more so in the last couple of years, is this rise of the athlete media and the athlete as a content producer. And the ones that get a lot of publicity are the NBA stars that are setting up their own production companies and their own media entities in their own right. But like the action stars were really early adopters in that space. Like they fueled the growth of things like GoPro, and they were producing their own videos. How different coming from traditional sports and working with athletes and these action stars, how different are they when it comes to like leveraging digital and understanding their own platforms and being content creators themselves as well as athletes?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that are unique, right, in our space, in that we own the media. We produce the media, we distribute the media, and we own long term the media. Unlike traditional sports, which are part of a bigger sort of conglomerate of brands and properties and franchises. So that's a big advantage, that we don't have to tippy toe around sort of rights considerations. The second part is the talent, content creators and their mindset. I think action sports as a property or an industry is really born out of that sort of viral video nature. I think if you think back to the original YouTube videos, there were those, wow stunt moments, and so that's naturally where this is this property and this industry has evolved from. So that's a good starting point. And then from an athlete point of view, the talent get paid by producing content, and that be that live in arena content or media content. Yep. So that they only get paid for what they do. There's no long term contracts from the majority of athletes. They need to be creative as an athlete and as a media entity. And, I think we've seen over the years, in action sports in particular, I mentioned Ryan Williams before, the Funk Brothers, who are a top YouTube, producer, they've got, I think it's over 5 billion views of their content online. People like Tanner Fox, these guys are born and bred in the media space. Ken Block, is a good example, with the Gymkhana series. He founded, obviously the founder of DC, and the Gymkhana franchise was all built around that sort of viral content as well. And he's now 10 Gymkhanas in, and a couple of billion views around that franchise alone. So I think there's like a natural gravitation to content creators and being creative and and selling that wow factor. I think in most sports, people think they can sort of participate and do some part of that. I could think you could shoot a basketball, maybe not as good as the NBA players, but you can play football to a certain extent. A lot of the stuff that these guys do is beyond the realm of people's thought process. You're never going to go and jump into the Grand Canyon on a motorcycle with a parachute on your back. You're going to launch yourself off a cliff face in Jamaica on a BMX bike, and that's the unique factor that these guys have that appeals to the mass audience as well.
And is that the natural progression of Nitro Circus to Thrill One Sports and Entertainment? Like what is Thrill One Sports and Entertainment? What's in the remit of what you're covering with that business?
Yeah, so I mean, it's been really exciting. I mean, we finalised a number of transactions in the formation of Thrill One Sports Entertainment in January this year. And some would say opportune timing, pre-COVID, but. Again, as I said before, we identified, there is a deregulated sort of structure in action sports, and there is no sort of vertical integration, in the space. So, we've got great investors. Our lead investor is the Rain Group, based in New York, and they just identified with us an opportunity to, expand, the ecosystem in, the thrill-based sports and entertainment category. So. It doesn't need to be action sports per se. We've looked at opportunities, and we'll add other properties in time. And we've looked in the rodeo world, in the mixed martial arts world, and other spaces. All with the mantra of thrill-based entertainment. And that can be sport, that can be media, that can be anything. So, what we did in the first instance is we took Super Jacket Productions, which most people would know by Rob Dyrdek, the sort of professional skateboarder, and he's produced Ridiculousness, which is going on, I think, something like 16 seasons now. And they're producing upward of 140 episodes of content of ridiculous a year for MTV. They're responsible for 50% of MTV's ratings a year in the US. So you think about the scale of just how big that property is. They've got great talent. I mean, the talent that comes through that show, week to week, are the A-list, sports and media talent, in the world. Yep. So we brought them in on the media side to have a fully functional media division, and then we also purchased Streetlight Skateboarding, which obviously Rob himself was involved in that. He founded Streetlight Skateboarding, but that was the first. They're the first professional skateboarding league in the world, and they're also the official qualification pathway for the Olympics. And we look at the Olympic trends, with skateboarding, BMX, surfing, the action sports trend. We thought that was a nice position to own a category and genre, and it was also probably the weakest category in action sports, in the Nitro family. So it was a nice, a nice sort of property to sit alongside the other properties, and that's it gives us extreme audience reach. I mean, we now, with the properties combined, are 38 million social followers combined. I mean, you look at the likes of Rob Dyrdek, Travis Pastrana, Nyjah Houston, people like that in that family, and in case of their 5 times, the Mike Trouts and the Aaron Rodgers and people like that of the world, Ricky Fowler, in the PGA world. So these guys and the talent are guys and girls, people like Letitia Buffoni. They're legitimate stars in their own right. And going back to what we said before, they produce amazing content all the time, and they're very engaging with their fans. And I think that just as a general, sort of rule of thumb as well is that, what I've found coming from professional sort of stick and ball sports, and this is, no slight on the amazing footballers I've worked with over the years, but the accessibility and the openness of the action sports stars, it's been really, really amazing to see. And I think part of that is driven by, the kids sitting in the crowd at one of our Nitro Circus shows. The path to riding in that show is a lot easier to achieve than it is, in professional stick and ball sports. So we've seen the case where one of the guys in our show was literally the year before being sitting there as a paying ticket holder and a fan to join the circus, quite literally. And so the aspirational nature of the business, and the accessibility to these people, they're riding on the motocross track or the skate parks where you and I could be riding as well, and that's that I think helps the growth of the business.
I mean, the other thing is like you said, there's no federation, there's no one driving it. So, you're charged with both fueling the growth in audience and fans and what you're doing that with across media and personalities, but then also, in traditional sports, there's grassroots programs to say who are the next stars that are going to come along. You've got to drive that as well. So how do you try to reach those next, whether it's a skateboard star, BMX star, motorbike star, anyone in that space? How do you try to reach them, engage with them, and potentially identify them? I'm guessing that's part of what you have to do as well to find out who the next stars are and make sure there is new people coming through.
Yeah, it's been a big focus, to be honest, in the last probably I'd say 12 to 18 months. I think with the likes of Travis and the Tony Hawks, and you think of some of those iconic action sports stars, they are starting to get a little older. So identifying who are those next stars to come through, it's been sort of a key focus for us. We did a really good created a really good partnership with Hot Wheels, the number one boys toy brand in the world. Yep. We launched a series called Superchargers. And that has a number of different layers, but the baseline layer for that partnership or that program is a bunch of action sports events around the world. So we literally in a number of probably 6 or 7 markets in the world, we conduct these grassroots events that anyone's kid, anyone up to the age of about 14 can come and participate. It could be literally their first competition they've ever participated in, or they may be that semi-pro, and we have different categories. But it gives them a chance to ride in a competition, be exposed to the Nitro Circus family, and we identify talent there, but also get to ride in the same skate park or the scooter park or the BMX course that the stars are riding, because our stars come along and they're the judges on those events. And then we're producing content with Hot Wheels. We're doing clinics, and then that ladders up into the Junior World Games, and we bring together each year in 4 different disciplines 16 of the world's best athletes to compete for the effectively the Junior World Championships of action sports. So that helps us identify talent. And then just recently, in the last actually in the last 6 months, it's been one of those COVID sort of programs and sort of initiatives. We launched a program called Daredevil Nation, and it's a user-generated content program. And it's been interesting that we have the best athletes in the world producing amazing content, and over the last few months we've seen in some cases 10x the viewership numbers from user-generated content from a 10-year-old kid trying his first backflip on a BMX bike, or a young 7-year-old girl dropping into her first skate ramp for the first time in her life. And it's interesting to see our audience has been conditioned to see this amazing stunts of the world's best athletes perform, have as much traction and probably if not more virality on the content of the user-generated angle as well. So and we've found talent through that program. I mean, again, with the Hot Wheels program, we now sort of manage a number of young athletes that we're sort of planning to nurture and bring through to the system and create the new stars. And that's not just from a sporting point of view. It's from a media point of view. It's from a content point of view. It's from working with partnerships and identifying their own sponsors. So we sort of manage the whole ecosystem for those athletes and try to create not only good athletes, but just good people as well.
Yeah, I mean, I saw Daredevil Nation, and it must be a little bit of Back to the Future for you to be like selling a membership again, because that's that's the lifeblood of like a lot of traditional sports, season ticket membership. But because you've got a product in events in different cities, I can't go to every single event. The adoption obviously has been pretty good. A way for you to connect with those fans, because they'd have the same passion for your athletes and your events and the content you're producing that a West Tigers fan would have, watching West. So has it been good to sort of start seeing that getting some traction with Daredevil Nation?
Yeah, it has. I mean, part of that is finding a pathway to connect and be more engaged with our fans. I mean, over the last few years, we've found huge engagement through our social platforms, and Facebook in particular. We were one of the first sports properties in the world to do a broadcast deal with Facebook for our live sport, which had great success.
Yep.
We built a huge audience there, and we engage. The engagement rates are phenomenal. In a given week, we sometimes have higher engagement than the NFL and the UFC and properties like that. Yeah, but at the same time, we want to get a little deeper. And Daredevil Nation is that sort of that fan club type experience that we want to sort of nurture and create an environment where there's exclusive content, and we learn more about these people, understand what they want to see, and provide unique opportunities. And again, I think it's sort of been the silver lining in some respects. If there is a silver lining to the sort of pandemic phase, that it's enabled our team to be a little bit more creative, and also we're doing so many things so often that it was given a chance to put our head above water for a second, take a breath, and work out how do we better engage with our audience. And create sort of that meaningful engagement. And Daredevil Nation, we've only been going for probably 6 weeks now, but it's been a huge success out of the gate. So we're excited where that can go.
I mean, it is a pretty common theme when in a lot of businesses you're so much on the go of doing the day to day and all the plans you've got, and that there's a whole bunch of projects. We'd like to try that. Everyone's got a bit of bandwidth to try those things to see how they can engage fans. So it's good to see that. You've talked a lot about, and it's hard because a lot of people want to put a business in a box and say, what are you? Are you a events business? Are you a media business? Are you if someone asks you from that's your role, chief commercial officer, what do you view yourselves as? Do you not put yourselves in a box?
We don't put ourselves in a box. We're our own box in some respects. We're a sports company, and that's been one of the evolutions as well. I should say, we're a sports company, we're a media company, we're an entertainment company, and we live in each of those verticals. And originally we were very much an entertainment, choreographed entertainment, media production. Over the last 3 years, we've moved heavily into the sports side of things, and we've launched, the Nitro World Games. Obviously, we've brought SLS into the family, and they've got the World Championships and the Olympic qualifiers. We launched Nitro Rallycross, which is taking production vehicles and launching them 120 feet over gap jumps, and these cars launch faster than an F1 car. We're about to move into the electric space in motorsports as well, which is going to be an exciting initiative. Yeah, and then our roots are born in media. The brand was started as an MTV show, back in 2000, in the 2000s and 2005, I think. And and we're still, with the Super Jacket element of our new business, we're a fully fledged and not even fully fledged, but a thriving media business. I mean, one of the largest producers of content, in the world of media right now. So, we like to sort of use this, one-stop shop in some respects. We can sort in a way be sort of all things to all people, and our audience has changed as well, depending on the property and the platform. We have, when we talk about our touring show, we do research, the research comes back to show, our audience is very much, 50-50. In fact, in some cases, we have a higher female audience than we do male audience, and very family oriented as well. It's usually, an average female of, 40 years of age with, 2 or 3 kids in the family. When we move to our social and our content side of things, it swings wildly, 80-20 male and a lot younger as well. So, and then our traditional sports properties, because they live in linear television world, are an older demographic. So, we do sort of, pivot, and, it's a little horses for courses in terms of the properties and where we've got our strong suits and where we pivot to other properties as well.
But it gives you, I guess, that flexibility and de-risks all the different opportunities. Like, obviously now your events business has been severely impacted by COVID with postponements and moving, but the fact that, your media is still powering and you're still producing content for different partners, obviously with challenges. I'm sure your media production, in a COVID safe environment has largely changed, but it's a matter of still getting the content out the door. That de-risks the opportunity for the wider business.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, as I said before, the chance to get our head above water. I mean, I think what's been encouraging in this period is the buy-in across the company. I mean, from our highest executives all the way down to our junior staff, everyone contributing to ideas about getting creative. And I think, I will say for sure, the media side of our business has been a blessing, through this period. I mean, we've been as busy, if not busier, and, on the ridiculousness side, with Super Jacket, they're producing content, and we're one of the first studios in Hollywood back to filming, sort of post-COVID, with all the procedures in place. But they're now pumping out a huge volume of content that other people are looking to them as the example. And I will say, in some respects, it's created new opportunities where we've identified where priorities lie. And I mean, we can't wait for live events to come back, of course. And it's an opportunity cost, but it's not probably had as big an impact as we thought it could have had, because of the creativity and the ability to sort of pivot and move around and utilize the media strength of our business. I mean, the other part is, we've seen as well is the ability and the inherent flexibility in a sport, or industry like ours is, we've created a backyard series where we've identified compounds. Travis Pastrana's backyard is it's called Pastrana Land, and it's a Disneyland for action sports athletes and talent. And we produced an event out of his backyard a couple of weeks ago called the Pit Bike Championships, and we had 11 teams, all sponsored by brands, and it was sold into ESPN, and ESPN broadcast it. And it's quite literally 22 guys and girls riding kids' motorcycles around a backyard course, albeit the best backyard course ever built, in the history of motorsports. But it was, it just proved the creativity that we can pivot. We don't need to, bring a league together or work out bubbles and those kind of things. We're able to find creative ways around that. And in some respects, open up new opportunities. We're now expanding that series into a multi-leg series in the back half of the year. We'll wait to see what happens with traditional sports, college sports, the NFL, those kind of properties, because there's a lot of hours tied up in the media world right now for sports. And in a couple of weeks' time, we're going to find Saturdays very empty on broadcast here, particularly in the US. And I think we've got an opportunity to, again, with that creativity, to find alternatives for the likes of the ESPNs and the NBC Sports and the CBS Sports of the world to provide sort of meaningful content, great talent, great personalities, and then drive tune in as well. I mean, that's the beauty sort of to round out the ecosystem is, we create the great event, we can go and produce it ourselves with our in-house capabilities, with the great talent, the great influencers, but then we can also promote that and market that because we have that 35 million, strong follower base. So we've got inbuilt tune-in opportunities to drive audience to those broadcasters. And that's been reflected commercially. I mean, we've in the last probably the last 2 or 3 months, we've signed over a dozen brand new sponsorship deals at a time when brands and partners want to activate. They want to be active, in certain categories, and in traditional sports that doesn't exist right now. We've been able to find an opportunity where we're actually seeing great increases in our our commercial revenue on the back of sort of being creative and being able to pivot with the times.
I mean, that is the, you're not tied down to a media rights deal like a traditional, beholden to the media, the media owner, and this is what we have to deliver. You can actually be agile enough to, like you said, fill some of those spots that will be available, but also be early adopters to new platforms like Quibi. Like, how do you decide like which of those new platforms come up to go? What does it look like? Whether it's you've done work with Facebook, you've done a series on Quibi. You've got because you own everything. How do you make some of those decisions on some of those newer platforms?
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, it's very much a horses for courses, and the right property and the right concept or creative fits different molds. And I think what's been interesting over even the last 12 months, we've had a huge success with Quibi. Jeffrey Katzenberg's new company that's launched, and we launched a program called Life Size Toys, which was again taking kids' toys and supersizing them and launching them or driving them as fast as we could. Yep. In the same 12 months, we've also worked with History Channel, which is traditionally a very older demographic, and we produced a live stunt series called Evil Live, where we took Evel Knievel's most iconic jumps and have recreated them or finished the job that he couldn't do. And
that
Evil Live program was in 2018 was the highest rated show on cable television in the whole of the United States. So we find the right opportunity and the right creative for that property. And I think what's interesting is, again, because we're not tied to legacy deals or not to say that's we'd love to have legacy deals and we'd love to have a $1 billion rights deal and those kind of things, but we also know where our audience lives. So, as I mentioned before, doing a broadcast deal with the likes of Facebook or a Twitch, an Amazon, design, we know that our audience lives digitally, and we can create content that's meaningful, that we can drive audience, we can drive subscriptions for those kind of people as well. So, we again, without sort of being a all things to all people type approach, because we need to be targeted, we know that we can pivot and create opportunities for for networks and media entities around the world.
So one of the questions I had, how do you create that? Because you're very agile in nature and you can deliver anywhere. If someone said, "Hey, we've got 6 hours next Saturday, do you want to be part of it?" You would most likely say yes. But how do you have your conversation with your sponsors, who a lot of the time go, "Here's all the things we want. Tell us what it is. We want to plan it." Like, how do you have that flexibility with your sponsors to say, "Hey, next week we're on ESPN for 6 hours. Are you involved?" Like, how does that conversation happen with your partners?
Yeah, I mean, it's like they don't love it at times. To be brutally honest, I mean, we've got a great group of partners, and majority of those partners are on board for multi-year agreements, and the majority of what we do is on a set schedule. What I think, these sort of opportunists, we call them that, programs or initiatives that come up, actually is almost in some respects a way to bring in new brands. So we find people that have got, it's a tactical campaign in a certain window, or it's a product launch or whatever it may be. And normally most of our sponsors and our partners support those programs as well, whether they add it on or we pivot from something else. I always like to say, the agreements are made for divorces, not marriages. And if we've got a great opportunity for our partner, and there's another benefit in their agreement that's due to come down the line in 2 or 3 months, but this is a better opportunity, then we'll pivot and let our partner shift that asset. We're not long-term agreements and it's the letter of the law. We want to work with our partners. I mean, that is the very notion of partnership, right? Is to create opportunities, and appeal to their audience. So that's our focus. But we've seen this in the last sort of 6 months. These sort of unique opportunities that pop up, and you're right. I mean, quite often it's a call. We had one this morning where we've popped up with 2 or 3 different ideas, and we'll deliver those before the end of this year, which didn't even exist before 9 a.m. this morning. These will end up on broadcast, and that just creates new opportunities to bring new brands into the family. And we work with we know what brands want to achieve, and sometimes sometimes those concepts are driven to achieve those brand objectives, where we'll say we have a brand, brand X is looking to achieve, Y, in Q4, what can we create to do that? In some cases, we'll literally go and create a program that goes and lives on ESPN. And I think there's a company called Tractor Supply company here, which is a more of a rural Home Depot or a Bunnings type of concept. And we literally created the pit bike championships that they were presenting rights sponsored, to take advantage of the rural nature of the event. All the product that was used to build the track was from Tractor Supply. And that's a very creative opportunity where we were dealing with creating a solution to a challenge that they had. And they're flying on the stock market. They want to keep that momentum going. How do we create opportunities? And that was an example. And 4 or 5 weeks later, we've got a show on ESPN, airing on a weekend. So we try and just be creative. And so I said, it's half looking after the existing partners and creating opportunities where we see them, and it's also a good way to bring in new partners to the family.
But effectively, anyone that comes on board knows that they're going to get that agile, opportunistic nature. That's what your business is. That's where the opportunities lie. So if you are a straight down the line, I want my logo in the top left corner for every, for X many minutes and tell me how many times it was done, like they're probably not a partner for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a case where there's some minimum requirements, but we often sort of say, and to steal one of Travis's lines, we use it in every proposal we do, is be careful what you wish for, because Nitro Circus will give you the opportunity to do it, and that extends to Thrill One. And we're a creative company in our heart, right? So we start with a blank canvas and we sketch out with the brand, what that looks like, and what's going to achieve results for that brand and returns. And what we're not is a spots and dots company, where we're selling the sign on the side of the pitch and we're selling the billboard in the broadcast. I mean, they come along with the partnership, and there's a reason for them being there. Yep. But the reality is that we're creating unique solutions-based opportunities for these partners that they're born out of creatives. And that, we want to be sort of I guess regarded as a creative property, creative business that when the partner looks back at the end of the year, they say, that delivered for us. And we talk about Yokohama. I remember the president of Yokohama here said to us when we joined, it's like, please just round up for us where you can. And I mean, at the end of the year, I remember he came in and shook our hand and said, you've done more than round up. And that's how we like to operate as a company.
Terrific. Well, thank you very much, Brett Clarke from Nitro Circus and Thrill One Sports Entertainment. I want to finish off with the Sports Geek Closing 5. Do you remember the first sports event you ever attended?
I don't, but I'm going to say, as I said, my dad played for West Magpies. So I'd imagine it's somewhere in a change room or a locker room at a rugby league, back in the New South Wales rugby league days. So I'd imagine that's probably it. So I'm going to say a West Magpies game.
Terrific. Well, it's always an answer that can't be Googled, so we'll go with that. You would have been to a lot of sports events and a lot of Nitro events in your time. Do you have a favourite food memory or a go-to food when you're at a sports event?
Yeah, I'm going to give two, and I'm going to give an Australian and an American food. I mean, over here in the US, you cannot find a meat pie hardly anywhere, so I'm going to say a meat pie for sure. And some will probably say I ate too many of them over my time, but meat pie on the Australian side. Yep. And I was lucky enough in the year that the Cubs won the World Series to go to Wrigley Field, and had a Chicago dog at Wrigley Field, and I can say that's at the top of the tree here in the US.
Yes, I've had a hot dog at Wrigley, and I could vouch for that recommendation. What's the first app you open in the morning?
Yeah, I mean, it used to be the traffic app, but now that we've actually closed our office, so we're until January we do not have an office. Home is the office. So scrap the traffic app, and it's probably the second app is Twitter, and I think it's still my go-to. It's usually I wake up and trying to find out the transfer business for Everton in the Premier League and track it down. But then it's that's my go-to most of the time.
Terrific. Who is someone that you think the Sports Geek podcast listeners should follow, and why? Whether it's someone you've worked with, or a talent, or maybe an author.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll be biased and say follow Travis Pastrana, follow Nitro Circus.
And we'll put some of the content and links in the show notes. That goes without saying, but
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of following people with positivity, and I find a guy like Rory Sutherland, sort of the vice chairman at Ogilvy Group. I mean, fantastic. A, he's creative. B, he's positive. I really love following him. And another guy, Musa Tariq, who was ex Airbnb and Ford, and as he calls himself, I think in his bio on Twitter, eternal optimist, and he absolutely is. But he's a creative person at heart. I just love sort of seeing and the way the way they approach things, but also just their positivity.
Well, in 2020, you definitely want to hang out with people with glass half full mentality. It's thrown enough at us.
Absolutely.
So the last one, and you can answer this with your Nitro Circus hat on and your own personal hat on. What social media platform is your MVP? What's your one platform that is your MVP?
Yeah, I mean, from a business standpoint, in our business, I mean, Facebook has been phenomenal for us. I mean, we've been lockstep with them as a company. I mean, the team at Facebook's been fantastic with us. As I said, we've launched broadcast rights. We've beta tested programs with them, and we've grown an audience. Probably to a stage these days where you couldn't grow, organically again with the algorithms and things. Personally, I think Twitter's great. I mean, I just love from a sports business point of view. I think it's the most engaging platform. My kids keep trying to convince me of TikTok, but I've not gone there yet. But I'll go with Facebook on the business front and Twitter on the personal front.
Terrific. I mean, on TikTok, are you seeing more of your talent lean into TikTok and do more things on that platform, and it's becoming a developing platform for Nitro overall? Yeah,
I think sort of in some respects, sort of respective of society, right? Our younger athletes are all over it now. Our older athletes can't stand it, and so in the locker room, it's one of those sort of young guys and girls over there, and the older guys and girls over this way. But I mentioned that Hot Wheels program. We're building up quite a substantial TikTok, property and sort of a channel, because we know that is sort of where the youth are operating. Between there and someone like Twitch as well, which has been very unique as well. We've done a lot on Twitch in the last few months to build that property, just because of the interactive nature of the property. So it's been an interesting sort of case study to see how it works.
Terrific. If people want to connect with you and talk to you and ask you about the podcast and ask you about Nitro, what are the best platforms for people to connect with you on the internet?
Yeah, I mean, reach out on Twitter. So at Brett_A_Clarke. Or anyone's welcome to drop me an email as well, brett@thrill1.com.
All right. Well, we'll put your links to your Twitter and your LinkedIn in the show notes. Thank you very much for taking the time. Appreciate it. And hopefully, when travel is allowed, we may be able to catch up for a beer in your part of the world or my part of the world at some point in the future.
I'd love to get home. I guess a little tidbit is I'm probably the only Australian that doesn't drink, and people look at me strange over here in the US when they say I'm Australian. So I'll catch up for an orange juice, but a beer. But I'd love to get home sometime soon.
Definitely. Thanks a lot, Brett.
Thanks, Sean. Cheers.
Find out more about Sports Geek's Digital to Dollars process at digitaltodollars.com. We'd love your support on our Patreon campaign. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/Patreon.
Thanks again to Brett Clarke. You can send him a tweet, Brett_A_Clarke with an E on the end. If you listened to last week, we had Catherine Clarke with no E, and this week we have Brett Clarke with an E. Very important, but send Brett a tweet or connect with him on LinkedIn. And please, when you do so, tell him that you listen to the podcast so he knows where you're coming from. I really do appreciate Brett sharing his time, telling us a little bit more about the Nitro Circus, Super Jacket, skateboarding, everything they're involved in. An absolutely powerhouse of a business. So really do appreciate him sharing his thoughts on the event business, the content business, and the facts that I think more sports businesses will go into this undefined category of don't put us in a box. Every company will become a media company. Every sports company will continue to be an events company and an experience company. And I think more sports will follow that lead. So yes, please connect with Brett. I guess the last couple of things before I wrap up. I mentioned it on last week's pod. If you are being displaced, out of work, trying to figure out what's next, your life has been thrown through a bit of a loop thanks to the C word. Not even going to mention it anymore. We get to hear about it enough. Please reach out, whether it's via email or via LinkedIn. I've opened up the Sports Geek calendar for some office hours spots. What are office hours? It's a 15-minute chat to see how I can help you, whether that is helping you find a new job, helping you review what you're doing in LinkedIn, helping you connect with the right people that you want to connect with, helping you define what you want to do. I've been lucky enough to go through a few different iterations of what my career looks like over my career as a geek, IT developer, a TV producer, radio talent, stand-up comedian, esports owner, team owner. So I've had a few roles. I'm a man of many hats. So I'd like to share the experience of my hat rack is probably a good way of explaining it. So go to sportsgeekhq.com/office hours if you want some help in that regard. I'll do my best to connect you with the opportunities and give the advice that I can give from my experience. And then likewise, if you are in a position trying to figure out what your new business looks like, what your team and resourcing position looks like after potential cuts and the pressures that COVID has put on. There you go. I've said that in that name. I really should get James to bleep that, but apologies. But if you are restructuring your business and trying to figure out how it's going to work from 2021 onwards, again, happy to have a chat and see how Sports Geek can help, but then also how I can potentially connect you with some of these talented people that are now available. So if you're trying to figure out how you're going to cater for your digital, commercial, content production, marketing, ticket sales, sponsorship problems in those areas, please reach out. sportsgeekhq.com/phone call allows you to book. That's it from me for this episode. Thanks again to my guest, Brett Clarke from Thrill One Sports and Entertainment. Please connect with him. If you need anything from me, go to sportsgeekhq.com. There'll be big buttons there to either organise a time to chat. There'll be information on the Sports Geek Amplify series. If you're a solution provider or a sports tech provider into the world of sports and you want to reach the Sports Geek audience, the Sports Geek Amplify series is what I am building, and it's in pre-production for that exact need. But I'd also love to see you on the next Sports Biz Zoom calls. You can go to sportsgeekhq.com/Zoom calls. I say it enough. You should know that by now. And RSVP every week. And I really do appreciate the people who do RSVP every week, because it's been a great way to stay connected during this lockdown life that many of us are living right now. Until next episode, my name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
We'd love your support on our Patreon campaign. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/Patreon. Want to help drive more revenue from your digital efforts? Book a time for a call. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/phone call.